Welcome to Prospects to Pros, the podcast that covers the guys going in the NFL draft, the guys who got drafted in the NFL, and everything in between. And Dane Brugler, we're talking about new stuff today, stuff that we've never really had to talk about before with respect to the NFL draft. But we're talking about guys that might make more money staying in college. Our friend Jim Nagy tweeted something out from the Senior Bowl on Tuesday morning saying he's hearing about deals up to $5 million NIL deals for some quarterbacks who to stay in school or to have another year at their school, and that is thinning out the 2023 quarterback class. And as someone who covers college football and talks to the people at the schools and the NIL people all the time, the 5 million, very difficult to believe because it is lying season. And basically every kid's agent is lying to every collective out there saying, well, school X is going to give him this. So what are you going to give him? They're all lying to pump up the market. But that said, there are deals where people are staying at their school when they could have gone to what would be perceived as a bigger school. That would be Quinshon Judkins, the running back at Ole Miss. Everybody assumed that Auburn or Alabama would scoop him up. Nope. He's saying signed a deal, but he was a freshman. He's not draft eligible. It's different when NFL money comes in. But Jim's point, and I thought it was very interesting, and you and I were trading names before we started the show. There are quarterbacks who are very good college quarterbacks coming off very good years who probably would be 5th, 6th, 7th round picks in the draft, who might not make the roster next year or might make basically the minimum in college, in the pros, and might actually make more than that for another year in college.
NIL has really changed everything. And, I think it's fascinating because this quarterback class and especially from Jim's perspective, because, he doesn't care about Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud, these underclassmen. He's focused on seniors because that's going to be at who's at his game. And it's an interesting mix. Now, the guys that have already committed to the Senior Bowl are the 6th year guys.
Right.
Clayton Tune from Houston, Jake Hayner, Fresno State. Tyson Bagent's not a 6th-year guy, but we know he's coming out from Shepherd. And then Hendon Hooker, he accepted his, but he won't be able to play, obviously, because of the ACL. So all those guys have exhausted their eligibility, but now there are these other guys that can take advantage of that extra year, talking about Michael Penix from Washington, who has already announced that he is going back to school. Bo Nix, Oregon, who, let's be honest, they have no shortage of income streams coming into that program.
They have a very active, aggressive collective.
Yes.
They're one of the kind of cutting edge leaders in that department. They were ahead of the curve on almost everybody there. So yeah, and not even just quarterbacks. I don't know if this affects next year, but I saw Jalen Hyatt now has an NIL deal with Hyatt with the hotels.
Yeah, right.
And he's one that had one good college year. He might come back.
Well, but I think the difference there is Hyatt is, if he comes out, he's a likely top 40 pick, right? And so I think there's different money there when we're talking about a top 40 pick. But some of these
always going to be more than college,
Yeah, exactly. And so, and that's why Anthony Richardson, who announced this week, Anthony Richardson was making over $1 million this year in NIL money. And that probably could have, gone up $1.5 million, maybe $2 million more, who knows, if he came back to school. But he bet on himself that, hey, I'm going to be drafted higher in terms of, what I'm going to be making. And he decided to come out, which is, it's a fascinating development. But, you think about, Brock Purdy, who is now the unlikely starter for the San Francisco 49ers as they make a playoff run. I believe he was the last quarterback drafted last year.
He was Mr. Irrelevant.
Exactly.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah. So round 7, final pick in the draft. His contract it's like 4 years, under $4 million total. So he's making under $1 million a year. The guarantees, not all that great. So, it's, if there's going to be say Bo Nix is making over $1 million, I understand why he'd go back. If, some of these other quarterbacks that are maybe on the fence, like a Jaden Daniels from LSU, if he's making close to that money to go back, you can understand why, especially with Kayshon Boutte, the wide receiver, announcing this week, hey, I'm going back to school. So, maybe that could affect the decision for the quarterback. There's so many, and it's fascinating with the transfer portal. I saw there's over 1,000 names in the transfer portal. Being a college coach is hard enough with recruiting. Now you factor in this layer, man, I don't know how you keep it all straight. I mean, it's craziness out there.
Well, the good news is they're paying college coaches more than they ever have before too. So I will quote Don Draper, as I often do on my own show, the Andy Staples Show, which you can listen to if you like college football and want to hear us talk college football all the time. But remember what Don Draper said? That's what the money's for. So when you're making $9.5, $10 million a year, I've got no sympathy for you having to juggle all this stuff. But there is a lot to juggle. Like you mentioned, Jaden Daniels. If you watch the SEC championship game, you saw Garrett Nussmeier come in and you're like, is Jaden Daniels even going to start next year?
Yeah. I mean, now I think Georgia maybe took the foot off the pedal a little bit there later in the game. And I get it. Jalen Carter didn't play much. They wanted to keep him healthy and fresh
after he lifted Jaden Daniels like a little, it's sort of like when a toddler gets out of the garage and you grab the toddler and you wave to your neighbor across the street. Got him. It's okay. That is exactly what Jalen Carter did to Jaden Daniels.
He threw up the number 1 with the other hand, to saying, "Hey, this is why you need to take me number 1 overall." Yeah, I mean that was great. But I mean, it doesn't take much to realize why Jalen Carter is one of the best players in this draft. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. The quarterback market is okay. If Jaden Daniels does come back, does that mean Nussmeier's gone? Is he gonna try to go find some place to start? Like if you're a college coach or you're keeping your phone lines open, you don't know what dominoes are going to fall, and so how this affects the draft. Bringing it full circle here. And that's why I know. Like, I mean, I've scouted most of these guys, but I've held off on doing my final reports on guys like Jaden Daniels or Sam Hartman from Wake Forest or Bo Nix from Oregon. I haven't done their full report yet, just because I'm not sure they're going to be in this draft. So it's a really interesting wrinkle that. I mean, it started with COVID, giving everybody that extra year of eligibility. So even fifth-year seniors have to officially declare for the draft. And Will Levis had to officially declare, even though he's a fifth-year senior. So, I mean, I can't wait till we're past that. But now with the NIL money coming in, it's just another factor we have to consider.
Well, and the Hartman thing, I've been chasing rumors about him for a couple weeks now, and I was told by the Wake Forest people, no, the plan is still for him to go into the draft. But until he says it, you don't know. It's very strange.
There's more options than ever for these guys, and it's great for the player. Whether it's monetary, whether it's getting more experience, or a better opportunity somewhere else in a transfer situation. I mean, opportunity is great. Options are great, but it does complicate things a little bit, for a lot of people.
Well, and it raises the quality of the college game if this is actually what's going to happen. If you have third-day guys who are coming back for another year because financially it's better, maybe better for them, and in a lot of cases they're also betting on themselves that they have a productive college year, it bumps them up in the draft next year, and that's real money. But if you get some of those guys back, it does help, and especially we're not talking about helping the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ohio States because their NFL guys are going to leave after year 3 anyway. That's just how those programs work. Those are kind of elite of elite, and that was their plan all along. But the Wake Forests, the Oregons, even I know Oregon has money, but they're not at the same level as a Georgia or an Ohio State in terms of what level of player they bring in on a regular basis. So if they can get that guy back. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a quarterback. It could be a offensive lineman. It could be a linebacker. It raises the level of that team's play when you have a dude who is above average to pretty darn good in college, and you're not having to work in a redshirt freshman at that position.
Yeah, at some point, this has to be regulated a little more. And I don't know what the answer is, because it's for a lot of these guys, they're transferring multiple times, and that throws off their credits in terms of graduating. Like, that's a factor in all of this. I do feel for some coaches who, they invest so much time and effort into developing these guys only to see them bolt. And so I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't have the answers, but it has to be regulated in some way. So it's just not the wild, wild west. And every college coach has to worry about, okay, who's going to poach my best players because they can add an extra zero, or they can, throw in something else, or it's a crazy world out there. And, I don't know. We'll see how it affects the draft, specifically this one. Yeah. But, it's constantly evolving.
I will say, as someone who covers college football, let it stay the wild, wild west for as long as possible, because this is ridiculously fun to cover. This is crazy, but
yeah.
It is nuts. Like, for example, I got a call yesterday, said Austin Reed's in the portal again. And if you don't really follow college football closely, you're like, who's Austin Reed? Well, to put it in NFL terms, he's the next Mike White or Bailey Zappi. So he's the guy who transferred to Western Kentucky and blew up at Western Kentucky. He originally was at University of West Florida, which is a Division II school in Pensacola. And he had great years there, led into a D2 national championship. He goes to Western Kentucky. He's second in the country in passing yards this past year, and he's in the portal. I would expect him to end up, somewhere, maybe Big Ten, ACC, but in the Power Five. And the Western Kentucky people are mad because they're like, hey, look at Bailey Zappi, look at Mike White. You can succeed there. And to which I say to them, you got them out of the transfer portal too.
Yeah.
So live by the portal, you die by the portal.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it works both ways. And I'm interested to see, some of these decisions are going to be interesting. Sam Hartman's an interesting decision. Max Duggan will be an interesting decision. I was told all year by scouts that, no, he's going back. He's going to go. It feels like he's been there for 12 years, but just because he started as a true freshman. But he's a 4-year starter, and he can go back for another year if he wants. And obviously, I think we'll wait, or he'll wait until after the college football semis, whenever TCU is knocked out, to make that final decision. But, in his mind, he might think at this point, you know what, maybe I've taken this as far as I could go, time to move on. Or, losing that Big 12 championship game, maybe that lights a fire and saying, hey, I need to go back. I need to, but that. He's also going to lose his top 3 receivers, led by Quentin Johnston. So there's so many layers to this, and each decision, it's the underclassmen decisions are always a big domino for the draft every year. Which underclassmen come out, which go back. And now, another layer with these seniors to see what decision they make.
Well, let's talk about a more traditional decision, and that's a third-year player who has a lot of elite physical traits, maybe not elite numbers, who did declare for the draft, and that's Anthony Richardson from Florida. He's going to be in the draft. He is 6'4". He is 235 pounds. He is lightning fast. He has a massive arm. He also completed 33% of his passes against Florida State and was a 53% passer, 53.8% passer for the year. He is a case study in traits versus production, and I'm fascinated to see what happens with him.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, he's a true wild card. He could be the 16th pick in the draft. He could be the 60th pick in the draft, and neither would surprise me. I mean, you can understand why either scenario would happen. This is a big, twitchy athlete, a freak show athlete. Looks like a linebacker, runs like a corner, throws like Dan Marino. I mean, it's just it's a rare combination of skills, and I think that he has, a handful of throws every game that make you go, okay, yeah, you know what?
I see it.
That's a smooth stroke. That's, did you see how he read left to right there? Did you see how he came off that man? Did you see how he put it over the line? I mean, he has these moments. It's not like he's a complete project, but there's no consistency there. And
I was going to say, then there's the throw where he's got a swing. He's just got a little swing out to the back, and he throws it to somebody two people deep on the bench on the other side of the field. So.
Or it bounces. I mean, it's not like he misses consistently high or low. It just it could be really inconsistent. But it's the same thing. Like he has an inconsistent feel for his fastball. When to take a little bit off, when to put a little bit on, trajectory. Just too scattershot. And so, look, this is
that problem early, and it's still somewhat of a problem, but has fixed it a lot better. It made it a lot better than it was. Is Will Levis?
Yeah.
Will Levis had no touch on his fastball before either.
That was a big problem with Josh Allen's film at Wyoming. That he couldn't. So some of the simplest screens were an issue for him in terms of firing the ball too hard or putting too much loft on it. Or it's something that is a fixable thing. I mean, you can learn and with more coaching. And it might have been. This might be a situation where Anthony Richardson felt like he learned all that he could from this coaching staff, and it was time to move on. And that's a real thing. Now, I also think he's been told since the summer that, hey, you're a first round pick. You're going to go early. I think he's been told that. And so once that seed is planted in your mind, it could be tough for a lot of, 20-year-old players to just forget that, block that out and say, you know what, I'm a big time player and, I'm going to go early and, regardless of, I could use more time. And I mentioned this before, but my biggest thing with him is he needs reps, and he's not going to get reps in the NFL, at least in year one. And who knows when he's going to get on the field. And so, and when he does, it's probably going to look ugly until he's able to turn things around. I mean, we've seen that, Justin Fields, as bad as he looked as a rookie, and even earlier this year, it took time for not only Fields, but the coaching staff to figure out, okay, this is how we need to, best use him to highlight his strengths and help him develop. So it takes time when you have such a super talented player who is undeveloped in a lot of areas. So it's not just dependent on Richardson doing what he needs to do to get better. He has to go to the right situation where the coaching staff understands, okay, this is what I need to do to get the most out of this player, to bring him along. And so each team's going to feel differently. I mean, I checked in with, different scouts and to get their opinion on it. And they each kind of said the same thing. Like he's a wild card. It's the traits are obvious, the talent is obvious, but the asking price, the value on draft day is going to be widely debated between now and April. Where do you need to draft this guy? Because all 32 teams
and there's
love to have him.
There's a chance he's Logan Thomas. Except the difference is Logan Thomas had a lot more production in college and didn't have as elite of traits as a passer. But Logan Thomas still playing in the NFL. So it's possible that happens.
I think Richardson has shown a lot more in terms of like, hey, I could see this working out. I could see him turning into a guy. But it's just the inconsistency is tough. So
Logan Thomas was better at football in college as a quarterback than Anthony Richardson was. And see, that's what I come back to. We had this discussion last week with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. And my thing is take the person who's better at football. I look at these guys. I mean, you mentioned Justin Fields. Justin Fields had off the charts production in college.
Yes.
So
no doubt.
This because the only person you can comp is Josh Allen his last year at Wyoming. But if you go to Josh Allen's junior year at Wyoming, he actually had a pretty good year. Or I guess redshirt sophomore year. He had a pretty good year. He lost some talented receivers, and all of a sudden they're playing like an elite defense like Iowa, and he can't do anything. But
and I wasn't trying to compare him to Fields like as players. I just talking about the situation and how important it is.
Yeah.
Where you go is important because if the coaching staff doesn't know how to use you, then because that's even in September. We were talking about Justin Fields as like, this is not going to go well. Like this is going to end poorly. Fields is going to have to move on somewhere else. He's going to be a bust. Like this is September. But then it's a first year coaching staff with Chicago. They figured out how to use him, how to unlock those skills. And I think Anthony Richardson and Fields are different players, but it's going to take Richardson going to a place like that where they understand how to unlock all this talent, how to corral it and then, unleash it on the field. It's not as easy as, hey, just go do your thing.
I will say it's different because in the NFL, it's unlikely that somebody's going to say, well, because of your speed, we're naturally going to use you as a read option guy. He's not a great read option guy. His read option instincts are not good in terms of when to pull, when to let the back take it. But that's not something you're going to have to do a ton in the NFL. They're not worried about a lot of design quarterback run because they're just that's going to get you beat up. So it may be that, because that's what everybody wants him to be in college, because that's what every coach kind of defaults to. If you got a quarterback who can run like that, well, I'm going to put the ball in the back's belly and just freak out the defense. But in the NFL,
that's part of what makes, that's the part of what makes Richardson so talented, though, is that he has that in his toolbox, right? Is he's, as big as he is, but, it's like, okay, if Ben Roethlisberger could run a 4.4, what would that look like? So, not only are you that size, it's hard to get him on the ground, but, if he has that type of speed, then, you have to use it. You can't waste it. And so, it's really going to be a fascinating evaluation for these teams. Not the talent, because again, all 32 teams would love to have this talent on their roster that they could develop. It's just, what's the asking price? Where do I have to draft this guy in order to get him on my team? And the answer to that from team to team is going to look a little different.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out where he ends up going, because I'm with you. You could see him going in the first round. You could see him going in the bottom half of the second round, and maybe in the early third. Like, it is very strange to see.
Yeah.
A guy in the this much of a mystery.
The pre-draft process is going to be really important for him. Just like the interviews, for teams to understand, okay, where is he mentally? When he reads a defense, what is he seeing? Protections, all these different things that it takes to play the quarterback position at a high level. Where is he in that development? Is he close? Is he, pretty far away from that? Is it come natural to him? I mean, and I don't know the answer to those questions. Teams don't know the answer to those questions yet. That's what these interviews are for in the pre-draft process, to sit down with him, put him on the whiteboard, put up his tape from this year at Florida and say, okay, hey, what are you looking at here? What are you asked to do? What is the defense showing you? And how does that affect what your decision-making is? Like, all the answers to those questions is going to ultimately decide where he's drafted. And obviously, we don't have access to that exact information at this point, but it's something that will, and that's why it's going to be a talking point throughout the process, is because teams are going to use every minute they can between now and April to try to figure this guy out.
Yeah. I cannot wait, because like you said, freak show athlete. I think people feel like we are exaggerating when we say this, but I just don't recall seeing anybody like this.
He's different.
And that's what
he's different.
But it didn't translate on the field in college. Like, when you have somebody like that, it should be a prohibitive advantage. And Florida, Dan Mullen, when he coached Florida, the guy who initially signed Anthony Richardson, he didn't start him. He kept him behind Emory Jones, and Emory Jones is not an NFL quarterback. And then but Dan has a history of being loyal. Like, he wasn't going to start Kyle Trask till Felipe Franks got hurt. He almost didn't start Dak Prescott because Tyler Russell was the guy, and then Tyler Russell got hurt. So when Mullen was at Mississippi State, so we thought, okay, well, that's just his history. That's his personality. This new staff comes in, Billy Napier. He had a quarterback named Levi Lewis before, who had done a lot of really good things at Louisiana Lafayette. And Levi Lewis actually helped Anthony Richardson learn this offense. And you're like, it's a 60% run offense. They're going to run the quarterback a ton. Then the guy they had brought in as a transfer to be their backup gets hurt early. They had no confidence in any of the backups. They don't run him very much. It's all just an odd situation.
Yeah, it's funny. Levi Lewis, the exact opposite size-wise.
Anthony
Richardson. I mean, he's like 5'9", 180 pounds, and but yeah, no, it's that's never just, I hear a lot about how, college coaches that never assume the college coach knows what he's doing. Like, I mean, it was so frustrating trying to scout Kyle Trask, and, Emory Jones kept coming on the field. I'm like, what are you doing? Kyle Trask is your quarterback. He's, the reason you're in this position, why you keep bringing this other guy in. Like, let your starter start, let him play. And I mean, yeah, Dan Mullen was very frustrating, with the way he operated with his quarterbacks. But at the same time,
Damian Pierce said it wasn't limited to quarterbacks.
Yes, good point. Very, very good point. But that's why I bring up the pre-draft interviews and how important that is, just to understanding, how much he knew the playbook, how diverse was the playbook, just how much can we put on your plate, and that will help tell us, okay, this is going to be like, we don't expect him to see the field for 2 years or 3. We don't, trying to figure out that trajectory is a big part of determining where you draft him. If you don't feel like he can get on the field for 3 years, then I mean that was a big deal with Malik Willis, last year when we talked about a lot of people talking about, he's going 2 overall to the Lions, or he's not getting out of the top 10, or is this? People really underestimated how far away he was. A year away from being a year away, and that's
he got drafted exactly where he should have been drafted.
Probably. I mean, and that's, and again, a big part of that is he's not going to see we've seen the field a couple times this year, and you see how raw and inexperienced he is as a passer. But and it's the same thing now. Okay, with Anthony Richardson is how far away is he? I don't know the answer to those questions, and teams won't until they sit down with him to really peel back the layers and get a better sense for where he is mentally.
Let's talk about some of these guys that have also already declared for the draft. We're getting those every day. Right before we sat down to record this on Tuesday, Drew Sanders from Arkansas declared for the draft. Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State. Obviously, we expected him to declare, but he is declared. And by the way, if you would like a handy guide at The Athletic, we have a draft declaration tracker. So you want to go all the way down to Jacob Copeland at Maryland. Speaking of guys who signed with Anthony Richardson, who played with him in Florida. But Emmanuel Forbes, the corner at Mississippi State, another one we expected to be in this draft, and he's there. Your guy Tucker Kraft has officially declared for the draft. But
and they're still playing football.
They are
still in the playoffs. So
I'm glad he could just do that, though. It always drove me nuts when you had the guy who was obviously going out. He's obviously a first-round prospect. Like, he doesn't need to stay in school. And they're like, well, I'm not sure yet. I'll have to look at it after the season. We're not even thinking about it right now. Listen, we know you're interviewing agents. You're doing well, now. You probably already have an agent in the NIL days, but we know you're doing this. So just say it.
Yeah. No, and I think it's, you don't want to come off like you're abandoning your teammates or anything like that, but, celebrate it, especially a guy like Tucker Kraft from the FCS level. Everybody in that locker room knows he's different. He's not like me. I'm a good player, but he's a great player. So let's celebrate it a little bit. And so, the interesting too, remember, I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about guys sitting out bowl games and, oh man, he doesn't want to compete and, this and that. And I mean, now it's kind of become the norm. Drew Sanders, he announced today he's going to declare he won't play in the bowl game. Anthony Richardson not playing in the bowl game. It's becoming just, very, very normal for a lot of these guys. Cyrus Torrance, I don't think he's playing in the bowl game. He had to announce.
I'm not sure anybody from Florida is playing in the bowl game. Like, this is going to be a skeleton crew at the Las Vegas Bowl for them.
Hard to blame them. It's one game that really doesn't mean all that much. There's not much on the line for me except potential to get hurt. And so, I'm going to take my chance now and go. So the way we view skipping a bowl game is drastically changed over the last 5 years.
Yeah. And, look, the Las Vegas Bowl against Oregon State. Now, Oregon State is going to crush Florida in this game because Oregon State's happy to be there. And they're enjoying this trip. Florida, we have no idea who's going to, who's going to play for them at this point. But that's very far down the chain. You look at Ohio State, they had a player into the transfer portal yesterday, but he said, I'm going to play. Like, he's a backup. He plays on special teams. He's like, I'm going to play in the playoff. Like, I'm not leaving the team. So if there are still stakes, the guys usually still play, just like your guy Tucker Kraft playing in the FCS playoffs.
Yeah. And in that same vein, Jaxon Smith-Njigba announced that he will not come back for the college football semis and will instead start preparing for the draft, which, it's hard to blame him. I mean, if he were to push himself and try to play in that game and then, damage that hamstring even more, it probably knocks him out of the entire pre-draft process. So if he's not feeling right, and I don't think this is a compete issue, okay? I mean, Jaxon Smith-Njigba is one of the biggest competitors that I've scouted so far in this class in terms of the work ethic. What he puts into this is, I mean, he's been training for this since he was 5 years old. This is a big time competitor. His brother is a Major League Baseball player. I mean, this is a family that understands professional sports and what it takes. Jaxon Smith-Njigba has that mentality. So this is not a guy that's just trying to preserve himself just for monetary reasons. If he could go, I think he would go. Now, at the same time, it's just a bummer. We're not going to be able to see that Ohio State offense, at 100%
ever.
Right. We split the first 2 drives of the Notre Dame game in the opener, and that was all we got the entire year. So just a big bummer just from an entertainment value standpoint, but not a surprise. Smith-Njigba going to be in this draft class. I had him going late 1 in my mock draft. I think that's probably somewhere in that 20 to 50 range is where he's going to end up, and he's going to be a pretty good pro.
Now, would he be there if he'd been healthy and had a great year this year? Or would he be higher?
I think that he's always going to be in that range. I do think it's a missed opportunity for him to maybe show, because last year he was with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, two of up and coming stars in the NFL.
And Marvin Harrison Jr. was coming up behind him.
And Igbuka too. Yeah, no doubt. Yep. And so, a lot of people will say, the coverage is focusing on Wilson and Olave, and that opened things up in the middle for Smith-Njigba. That's why he led the team in catches. And, but he also set a Big Ten record for receiving yards, and that doesn't happen by accident. But with him being the guy, it would have been nice to see how he operated in that offense. Did we see him more outside? Because he was pretty strictly a slot guy last year. Could we see him more outside? Could we see a more diverse role for him? Just with the way that he worked in that offense. And how would that have affected CJ Stroud's evaluation? Because Stroud, you think of Olave and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison. Stroud is very emphatic that Smith-Njigba is the best route runner on that team, the best route runner he's ever played with. And so, what does that do for Stroud's evaluation in terms of better understanding where he's at? So it's just a bummer overall. I still think no matter what, Smith-Njigba was going to be in that late 1, early 2 range. I've said this before, but I know one team that gave him a 3rd round grade. But he's he's too good of a player. Because he's probably going to run in the low 4.5s. Like, he's not a burner. A lot of teams think he's a slot only. So that's why he's not a universally loved 1st round stamped player. But still, he's a really good guy, a really good player who's going to be in the NFL for a long time. So that's why he's still made it my 1st round mock draft. That's why I still think he has a good chance to go there.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him get on the field again, because I have a feeling it's going to be one of those situations where people forgot how good he was, and he's going to get drafted late in the draft, or late in the 1st round, go to a good team, and people are like, oh crap, we let him go to them.
Yeah. So, I mean, that what he did in that Rose Bowl, that's all you need to see. Like, I don't think he needed this year for you to know how good he is. I mean, it's all on tape from last year. It would have been nice to see him this year, but not necessary. I think you're right. He's just a really good player who's going to remind us next year.
Well, speaking of hamstrings and elite talents, I got to see Caleb Williams in person on Friday night at the Pac-12 championship game, and good God, is he special? He is locked up, and we knew that on TV, but good in person. It's when you see him escape a sure sack and just keep a play alive and keep his eyes downfield and make something happen, and then I was probably more impressed after the injury with some of the things he was doing, because you knew he was hobbled. I didn't know exactly what had happened. I knew something was wrong. I thought it was his knee at first because he kept grabbing that. But there's a throw he makes where he's already been hurt, and he's not been moving great. He's been taking sacks, kind of giving himself up because he knows he can't move. Where he just says, you know what, screw it, I'm moving here, and rolls out to the right, and off his back foot hits Jordan. The DB slipped, but there's no reason that Caleb Williams should have been able to get out with a bad hamstring and make this throw off of one foot as he was about to get hit. And it's just incredible. So I was really impressed. Now I talked to some people about this over the weekend. If you're Lincoln Riley, do you play Caleb Williams in this bowl game, or you just say, hey, look, man, let's just chill and get ready for you to maybe try to win another Heisman?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the Heisman's will already be done by that point. There's really not a ton on the line there. It's just get ready for next year, get healthy. But I mean, I think for your receivers, and like I don't know what their backup situation looks like, but for the rest of the players on that team, I don't know. I still think if you're the coach, you want to play them because you don't want to leave your other players hanging. You want to give them the best chance to win, to go out with.
They're playing Tulane. They have a pretty good chance to win it anyway.
So. Sure, no, but I mean, I don't know that defense with what I saw. I mean, I'll be eager to get your thoughts on.
Terrible. It's terrible.
I mean, it's really bad. And Tulane's got a really good running back, Sharp, who reminds me a lot of James Cook. Last year at Georgia was a second round pick of the Bills. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, Tulane, USC, the better team. They're going to be favored, no doubt. But that defense can't stop anybody. So I don't know. I'd like to see Caleb Williams out there and one last hurrah with that squad. But yeah, he had 363 yards in that game against Utah, and that's with being injured, with that a really good Utah defense, and with them just once they knew he was hobbled a little bit, they just kind of let loose. And so for him to the courage to stay back there, stay patient, let routes develop. I mean, I tweeted the clip of the one dig throw that he had that was just a guy right in his face, and the arm talent to make that throw, just unbelievable. So yeah, he's I mean, any chance that he doesn't win a Heisman next week?
No, he's gonna win. He's gonna win. I can't imagine who else would have gotten that many first place votes across the whole country. Now, so I don't want to deal too much in hyperbole, but I'm thinking about the Lincoln Riley quarterbacks, since Lincoln Riley has been an offensive coordinator / head coach. And it feels like Caleb Williams combines a lot of the best traits of them, because he's not fast as Kyler, but he's bigger. He's still very fast, still at times, one of the fastest players on the field, and very good at
probably comparable arms.
Yes. And like Kyler, good at keeping plays alive behind the line of scrimmage, letting receivers get open, forcing DBs to cover. Intelligence-wise, Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield, who are both very smart guys, very similar to that. Not the power of Jalen Hurts as a runner, but definitely a more physical runner than Kyler was. So it's very interesting to see him in that offense, which Lincoln is always very good at designing his offense around the best traits of the QB. The thing is, this guy's traits they're all great. Like there's not one thing he does bad. There's not even a thing he's average at. He's just really above average at everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree. I mean, he's not. I guess size wise, you wish he was a little bit bigger, but I mean that's we're picking nits here. Like it's not like it's a fatal flaw for him.
Yeah.
And I promise
he also has that arm, the arm angle versatility that you usually see in guys that played a bunch of different sports. But he's been training for this his whole life, just in football. But he looks like one of those guys who played like 4 sports, who's just like, I'm going to figure out how to get this done. Kind of like Drake May does a lot of that.
Yeah. And that's being able to throw off platform from different angles, to be able to find the passing lanes. That's what you have to do as a quarterback. And he does it as well as anybody. He has more touchdowns this year against the blitz than anybody else in America. I mean, he is really good when teams try to come after him. He has answers to the test. And that's something that a lot of quarterbacks, they falter, they fall apart, and they're not able to step up like that. And that's, you love to see that as you evaluate for the next level, because in the NFL, you're seeing constant pressure. You have to be able to deal with it. That's why, I'm as high as I am on Bryce Young. That's why even a guy like Jake Haener from Fresno State, who just accepted his Senior Bowl invite. I'm a big Jake Haener fan because he understands. Awesome. I mean, that game against UCLA last year is stuff of legends. I mean, it's
last throw is unbelievable. Like, if you have not seen it, go to YouTube and watch Jake Haener UCLA 2021. Your mouth will drop.
He's a warrior, man. I mean, and he plays with such confidence. And he's a guy that's small. He's 6 foot, 210 pounds. His arm is good, not great. So the physical traits do not wow you. In a lot of ways, he's kind of like the Bryce Young of the West Coast. Now he's, going to be a day 3 pick, not a first round pick like Bryce Young. But if I'm going to bet on one of these day 3 quarterbacks, big fan of Clayton Tune, big fan of Aiden O'Connell, big fan of Jake Haener. We talked at the top how some of these quarterbacks are going to go back because of NIL money. This draft still has some pretty intriguing quarterback options on day 3. I think that Haener is going to play in the NFL for a long time as a backup.
Well, it's interesting because we mentioned earlier in the show Brock Purdy, and he got thrown into the situation when Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. Obviously, this is not what the Niners expected. They thought Trey Lance would be their starter. He's down, and Jimmy G becomes the guy. Brock, I covered a lot at Iowa State. I did a big thing on him in the pre-draft process. And, his whole mindset going in was, I kind of want to have Chase Daniel's career. Like, he wasn't expecting any of this. But I will say, watching him against the Dolphins, he came in prepared, and he looked like he was ready to play. Now, it helps that the 49ers have that offensive line, that Trent Williams is there to help you out, and they have that run game that the defense has to respect no matter what. But typically, if you're throwing a 7th round rookie quarterback in, he's going to poop all over himself, especially against a good team like the Dolphins. He did just fine.
Well, I think his whole thing is, when he's in rhythm, he looked really, really good. He executes at a high level. He knows where to go with the football. But when he gets out of rhythm, that's when things start to fall apart a little bit. But Kyle Shanahan is so good at keeping his quarterbacks in rhythm with the play call, with utilizing all the talent around him, the versatility of a Christian McCaffrey, of a Deebo Samuel. I mean, Shanahan is so good at utilizing all of those things. And with a quarterback like Brock Purdy, he's really good at keeping him in rhythm. And so it was a great spot for him to land, because I think that's what unlocks him as a quarterback. And so a really good marriage. It's obviously, it changes what we think of the 49ers in terms of legit
ceiling.
Super Bowl. Yeah, exactly. So, but at the same time, we shouldn't be surprised if Purdy, rips off a few wins here, maybe even in the playoffs. Like, he's not an incapable quarterback.
It's kind of what happened to him at Iowa State as a freshman. He wasn't really supposed to play. They had an older guy who was supposed to play. He got hurt. Brock had to come in, and Brock never let the job go. So it's fun to watch him, because he does some crazy. Now, he will drive you nuts sometimes. He will do some, oh no, oh yes kind of plays. And in the NFL, those are usually more oh no than oh yes. So but I'm excited for him, because he was always one of my favorite guys to cover. His story's great. They have the early signing period now for high schoolers, where they sign most of the guys in December, and then they can sign again in February. Brock was going into college the first year of that. And so the first early signing day ever in December 2017, he's sitting there at home. This is the day before he gets offered by Boise State. He's never seen Boise State. He's never been to Boise State. He's from Metro Phoenix, and didn't understand why nobody was offering him. Dad had been a minor league baseball player. He had just set all these records in the state of Arizona, but nobody was interested. And Boise State offers. He's like, listen, I've never even seen your campus. Is there any chance that the offer's still good if I don't take it right now, and I can just sign in February after I visit and see if I like you? And so they say, yeah, that's fine, which is a big mistake by Boise State, because what happened is nobody knew how coaches would react to that early signing period. And when 90% of the signees signed in December, the guys who didn't have a quarterback in the class were like, oh crap, what do we do now? So Brock Purdy became the hottest commodity ever. Iowa State, gets him in there early for a visit, and they offer him, and he really hit it off with Matt Campbell. But then Alabama, basically, there was a quarterback coach in Arizona who called a guy at Alabama for a favor. And like, hey, can you look at this guy's tape? Is he good enough for preferred walk-on? If he is, can you just give him a preferred walk-on offer so that we can drum up some interest? And so they look at the tape and they call back. They're like, no, he has a scholarship offer. And so Alabama, Texas A&M, UCF come in, but he really liked Matt Campbell. That's why he went to Iowa State. And then you got the month of Brocktober every year where he would just go bananas. So I'm excited to see that. It's when the really fun guys from college football, who you didn't know that if you'd see them again in the NFL, when all of a sudden they're thrust in the spotlight, it's a lot of fun.
No doubt. And I love Matt Campbell. I mean, he talks highly about most of his players, but he did say, he told me that Brock was the most competitive player he's ever been around. And, that it may be a little hyperbole, but it also says a lot about the player. And
he's got those Gardner Minshew quads. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Gardner Minshew in person, but he has massive quads.
Yeah.
And Purdy has those massive, quads way too big for his body.
And he's a family of athletes, like you said. His dad was a college baseball player, played in the minor leagues for a while. His sister was a softball player in college. Yep. His younger brother,
Nebraska.
Yeah, he was at Florida State, right? And then he transferred to Nebraska. So it comes from a family of athletes, and it's. I was a little surprised he was drafted. I guess it did come with the last pick, but still, he's got his opportunity. He's making the most of it so far.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. And listen, if you're going to get thrown into the fire, at least be thrown into the fire with Trent Williams, their left tackle.
Yeah, that's not a bad strategy to have. That's for sure.
That's living right. All right, Dane, this has been a lot of fun, but next week, I think we'll have an even better idea of who's in the draft. They'll weigh their NIL deals versus their potential draft stock. We'll have a little bit better idea who's playing in the All-Star games. We can break down some of the rosters that we know already for the All-Star games. We got to talk about North Dakota State's fullback. We haven't talked about him yet. We got to get some hot fullback talk in here somewhere. So this has been quite a college football season, and now it's All-Star time. Some of these guys may blow up in a bowl game, but a lot of these guys may skip their bowl games. And it's time to get going. It's time for some real heavy duty evaluation now that we know who's really going to be in the draft. Talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. Sounds good.